It's me, Mario, and I have your video review available for your quiz and AP US history coming up tomorrow. Some multiple choice things and matching. First of all, you need to know that they really didn't enforce the 1762 navigation laws, like very loosely enforced if they were enforced at all. You know what the Stamp Act, what its purpose was, why they objected to it, um, why kind of the ways that they protested against the Stamp Act, why the Quebec Act was so unpopular, what advantages the British Army had, uh, who the Huron Indians were and why they sided with the French, who are the coureurs de bois, and that's the word that looks like coureurs de bois, French fur trappers. You need to know what the Proclamation of 1763 did. And remember, it's the one that gave all the land west of the Appalachians to the Native Americans and told the colonists they had to stay on the east of it, and the colonists were really upset about that. Um, you need to know what a writ of assistance is, and that's a search warrant that doesn't expire. You need to know how much of the British debt was from the colonies, and that's 50%. You need to know what the Currency Act did, and that limited the amount of money that was spent, or that limited the amount of paper money that could be printed. You need to know that the Sugar Act actually decreased the tax, but they were going to enforce it, the tax on molasses. You need to know who came up with the phrase "no taxation without multiple change, without representation." You know what the Declaratory Act was, and that was an parliament that said that basically the colonists could be taxed by Parliament, and even though they weren't going to continue those taxes, they could if they wanted to. And you need to know that only a few people actually was really 100% in favor of the independence, and most people were kind of on the fence. Those things will all be done through multiple choice, matching true and false. For your short answer questions, you need to know what things were taxed by the Stamp Act. That's your basic anything printed, cards, newspapers, things like that. You need to know what things were taxed by the Townshend Acts, all right? And that was a tax on lead, paper, glass, tea, white phosphorus. Give me a couple of those and you'll be good. What was virtual representation? And that was basically the Parliament saying, look, even though we don't have a representative, you're still virtually represented. And colonists said, no, that doesn't work unless we have an actual representative. You can't tax us. You can only tax trade. You need to be able to tell me about the Boston Massacre, basically what happened. And we went over that with those worksheets and talked about it. But the Boston Massacre, basically a bunch of troops were standing outside of a guardhouse. A bunch of colonists came up outside the guardhouse throwing rocks and things. And the troops opened fire. Later on, they were found innocent because of John Adams' amazing lawyering, and nobody was executed. You need to be able to tell you about the Boston Tea Party, basically what happened. We talked about that at length. The guys dressed up like Mohawk Indians and destroyed all the tea that the British East India Company had in harbor, and as a result, the Intolerable Acts happened. They didn't steal anything else but the tea. They didn't steal any tea. They didn't destroy anything but the tea. And just tell me about it and what caused it. And that was the monopoly that the British East India Company had. Need to tell me what the Intolerable Acts are and what they did. This isn't an essay question, but it is worth 10 points. You need to be able to give me very specifically what it was and what it did. Okay? You want to talk about the Quebec Act, Boston Port Act, Administration of Justice Act, and the Quartering Act, which let them have troops in American houses. What were the causes of the French and Indian War? What was the result? The causes were American colonists, British colonists were moving into the French area, and the French were upset, and eventually George Washington went in and attacked and set up Fort Necessity, got beaten back, and that started it. And the result was that France was all but driven off of North America, and the British greatly expanded their areas, but they had a huge amount of taxes, or not taxes, of debt that was raised up as a result of this. And so that was, some of the causes and effects. And one of the biggest effects is this eventually led to the Revolutionary War. So you need to know what mercantilism was. We talked about that at length. What was happening? What were the British coming to do at the Battle of Lexington and Concord, and what happened at the Battle of Lexington and Concord? And then the First Continental Congress, we talked about that as well. You need to know that they got together, they wrote a list of grievances, they said, that everybody should have a militia, they gave the king a list of things they wish he hadn't done, and then they also swore allegiance to the king. So those are the things. If you study those things, you'll be doing great in AP US history.